Welcome back to the deep dive. We're always looking for fascinating sources to bring you unique insights, and today we're diving into something really quite extraordinary. It's Chapter 1, The Marble in the Blood, From the Core and the Vibration, The Vault of the Soul, a novel that's, well, deeply poetic and philosophical.
It really is.
And, this isn't your standard sci-fi or even a simple moral tale. The author actually calls it an architecture narrative.
An architecting narrative, yeah.
One that surgically dissects how emotional power can become an infrastructure of control. I mean, just pause on that phrase. Emotional power as infrastructure.
It's a powerful concept. It suggests something built, something systemic.
Exactly. And the system it describes, it doesn't impose itself through, obvious rules or laws. It's subtler. It works through frequency.
Frequency. Calibrating
Precisely. Making them sort of inoffensive, refining them, tuning them, rather than just banning them outright.
And that's really the heart of what we're exploring today, isn't it? Through the story of Edward, he's this child molded by what the book terms the vibrational elite. His journey becomes this thread, pulling us through ideas about, well, the domestication of the soul, how language itself shapes us, even how spirituality might just become a kind of protocol.
Spirituality as protocol.
Yeah. So our mission really is to see how this very first chapter lays all that groundwork, how this profound transformation begins, and we see it all through Edward's young eyes. It's about those quiet shifts, the almost invisible ones.
And adding another layer, the narration itself, it comes from 2050. From a collapsed world looking back.
Right, which gives it this this haunting quality.
It does, and the narrator says, they're not offering objective truth. Instead, it's fulfilled promises, ignored prophecies, and a child who learned too soon that the universe isn't divided between good and evil.
But between those who have access and those who ask questions.
And Edward apparently had access, so... Let's start unpacking how that access begins for him. His journey seems to crystallize around this moment when he's just 5, playing hide-and-seek, a simple game. But he ends up in his father's forbidden study.
Yes.
And finds something pivotal. Can you sort of set that scene for us? What makes this discovery so resonant?
Absolutely. So picture it. 5-year-old Edward hiding. He slips into his father's study, a place he shouldn't be. And the description is so evocative. The air smells of old leather, closed whiskey, and broken promises.
Broken promises. Even the air holds secrets.
Exactly. Even at 5, he couldn't name it, but you feel he sensed it. And there, low down, in the oak baseboard, he finds this caja fuerte, a strong box.
Not flashy or obvious.
No, not big or shiny, no visible lock, no name.
The beginning of the gaze. That phrase from the text.
Exactly. Perception before language. This primal, instinctive grasp of influence, of hidden things. It's not logical, it's deeper, a knowing.
So the sealed box, pulsing away, it's like the first hint of forbidden knowledge.
Right from the start. It's an initiation without words, really. A silent understanding that the most important things aren't said aloud, they're sensed. And this early intuition, this wordless knowing about power, it starts shaping him, doesn't it? Even though he's too young for the concepts themselves, it's like a seed planted in him.
A seed planted in a very specific environment. Tell us about that environment. High above Manhattan, wasn't it?
Yes, a tower. Windows like mirrors of the world reflecting outwards, revealing nothing inwards, and his parents' shadows, described as longer than the buildings. That image really stays with you.
It paints a picture of immense scale, but also distance.
Immense distance. It's a world of great wealth, but profound emotional emptiness. His father, Charles Lasker, magnate, patriot, visionary in public. At home, his smile was reserved for newspapers. His voice, a dictatorship of velvet, soft, but absolute. His presence, a suspended sentence, always there, always looming.
And his mother?
Evelyn. She's described as floating through the house like a designer lamp. Beautiful, distant, decorative. Her perfume, Edward notes, lasted longer than her words. It's a house built on surfaces, on unspoken rules.
It really does sound less like a home and more like, I don't know, a meticulously designed stage set. Or maybe a cage, as you said. How does this physical space, this architecture, tie into the novel's idea of emotional control?
Well, this is where that concept of sensitive architecture really comes into play. The novel talks about a system that does not prohibit, but suggests. It refines emotion, doesn't just crush it.
Suggests. Subtle.
Very. And Edward's home, with its marble walls that seem to absorb sound, creating this viscous silence that becomes a powerful symbol.
Viscous silence, like the silence itself has substance.
Exactly. The marble isn't just stone. It represents this cold perfection. but a perfection suggesting absence, a deliberate emotional control keeping everything contained smooth. It's the architecture of silence.
A silence that's not just quiet, but engineered.
Engineered to absorb feeling. Think about what that does to a child. Your natural joy, your sorrow, it just disappears into the walls. No echo. It teaches you to internalize, doesn't it? To self-regulate, almost out of necessity.
And the impact on him, even by 7, is described so starkly. Nights in that tower felt like velvet crypts.
Velvet crypts.
Forcing him to contain his breath, as if crying meant annihilation. As if survival depended on the world not knowing his feelings.
That's it. That's the domestication of the soul, starting not through punishment, but through this insidious conditioning. He learns to silence himself.
It makes you wonder, what kind of person emerges from that? Strength, maybe, but what kind of strength? Can you be strong without ever really confronting sadness?
It's a strength born of suppression, perhaps. And in that cold marble world, there was just one flicker of something else. Male. The governess.
Wow, the human face.
Yes, described with copper eyes, hands that told stories. She was, in Edward's eyes, the only thing in that house that didn't seem bought. She offered warmth, stories, a real contrast.
But even she was fragile.
Fragile, yes.
Yeah.
The narrative notes she starts arriving later each day, 5 minutes, then 15. She says she has tasks, but Edward, with that intuition of his,
He senses something's wrong.
he does. Her gaze changes. It surrounded him as if she were afraid to touch him, and he, needing her warmth, starts to resent her for pulling back.
That withdrawal must have felt like a profound betrayal for him. What happens when she eventually disappears? How does that shape his view of, well, humanity, vulnerability?
Her disappearance is, well, brutal. No explanation, just gone. And it teaches Edward this incredibly harsh lesson. Everything human was fragile, and the fragile should not be preserved but overcome.
Overcome, not cherished. Chilling.
It reframes vulnerability completely, turns it into a liability. Her absence, in a way, becomes her most powerful lesson for him. It cements this idea that connection is weakness in his world.
And that leads to that scene in the greenhouse. It's really quite unsettling.
The greenhouse scene, yes. Miss the sleeping orchids. Edward asks Mael so directly, "Do you also have secrets?"
The directness of a child, but with this edge.
Exactly. And then he continues, "What I don't know is whether they hide them out of fear or out of power." And then the hammer blow. "I saw that my mother is afraid. I saw that my father bought her. And I saw that the world is not made of love, but of contracts."
And Mael is just floored because he doesn't say, I think.
He said, "I don't think that. I just know it." It's pure, unfiltered perception. That beginning in the gaze again. He sees straight through the performance to the transactional core of his world.
Knows it. It's a brutal encounter with what the book calls forbidden knowledge.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it raises that question, doesn't it? When does that innocent intuition become this raw perception of adult power dynamics? And the detail about what she leaves behind.
After her sudden transfer.
Just an underlined passage in The Little Prince. What is essential is invisible to the eyes. And Edward keeps it like a knife.
Like a knife, not like a comfort.
No. It suggests even profound truths can be weaponized in a world like his. Used as a tool for control, not embraced for connection. It really foreshadows how he'll use his own insights.
So after Mael is gone, his training steps up. But it's emotional training, not physical.
That's right. His father, Charles, starts taking him along. Private meetings, exclusive clubs, places where men discuss markets, strategy, and human weaknesses.
And Edward absorbs it all.
He doesn't understand every word, but he learns to read the silences, the faces.
Yeah.
He grasps that crucial point. The power is not what is said, but what can be done with what the other keeps silent.
Finding leverage in the unspoken.
Precisely. And then Charles gives him that piece of advice, quietly, while shaking someone's hand. "Remember, son, no one gives what they don't want to take from you first."
Wow. What a worldview to impart to a child.
Brutal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Informative. But what's fascinating is Edward doesn't just hear it, he feels it. He discovers, as the text says, that to feel opened doors, and the doors led to rooms with secrets.
So emotions become keys, tools.
Tools, yes.
Okay.
Keys to hidden dynamics, levers of control, his own emotions, others' emotions. It's an incredibly sophisticated, almost predatory understanding for a child.
And the change in him is marked.
Clearly. By age 8, he stops crying. Not numbness, but mastery. By 9, he's got this black notebook, filling it with words like analysis, control, weakness, access, revenge.
Words he wasn't explicitly taught.
No, but words he absorbed, like songs. It's the full arrival of that emotional control, feeling turned into strategy, a blueprint for dominance.
Which brings us back to the strongbox. He keeps going back to it.
Every night, silently,
Oh, yeah.
opens the safe, looks at the folder inside, not reading it apparently, but just looking, to remind himself that the world, his world, was built on that core.
That unseen, pulsing core.
It becomes for him the blueprint of his emotional architecture, the cement of his empire, the primitive model of how to govern with what others fear to show. It's this nightly ritual reinforcing the silent truths he's learned.
Solidifying the path.
And it leads to this culmination, this silent metamorphosis. The description is so powerful. One ordinary day that no one noticed because metamorphoses make no noise.
Edward awoke, and the world seemed different.
He was no longer a son, no longer a child. He was something that still had no name, something it was not yet but already felt inevitable.
Metamorphoses make no noise. That's haunting. It's not dramatic, just an internal shift. Profound but unseen.
Exactly. A shift from vulnerability to this. Deliberate, calibrated force. Yeah. Perfectly suited to his world. Makes you think, doesn't it, about all the silent transformations happening inside people, shaping everything.
It really does. This chapter, this deep dive into it, it just lays bare how insidiously power can sculpt a soul, turning intuition itself into a tool for control. And that question from the future narrator.
How do you make a god from the remains of a child?
Perhaps with marble, perhaps with silence, but always, always with a strongbox. It leaves you with this deep, quiet unease.
It absolutely does. And it forces us to ask, in a world striving to calibrate emotions, to make everything smooth and inoffensive, where silence isn't just quiet, but an architecture of containment. What's left of our authentic selves?
Right. What's the cost?
What is the cost of learning that essential is invisible, not through empathy or connection, but through the cold lens of control, of contracts, of seeing vulnerability as something to be overcome?
As Edward's world used marble, silence, and secrets to reshape him, it leaves us with a question, I think, for ourselves, in our own lives. What hidden safes are we taught, maybe subtly, not to open?
What unseen boundaries shape our own emotional landscapes?
And how much of our own emotional architecture are we still building or maybe dismantling based on the unspoken rules, the frequencies of our world? It's something to really sit with long after the story ends.